Good morning, everyone. I like a good meme to start the day, right? Here's a good one from the UK. It's got a worried-looking Boris Johnson standing there looking at some lackey climbing a ladder, opening a box for justifications for lockdowns, and it appears to be empty. The lackey says, "We've completely run out." Uh-oh. Uh-oh. So we'll get into COVID, and we'll get into COVID probably at the end of the show. We've got some miscellaneous stuff to get to before we get to the governance section of the show, which is to say the Conservative Party is on their convention this weekend. They're I don't know, having their policy and gathering convention. It's online, and I'll show you some tweets about that. And there's movement at the southern U.S. border. Apparently they want to fly those people to northern states close to the Canadian border. Yikes. And, well, there's lots more. So first, did you think Canada was a safe country? Did you think that, like, you were safe walking around in a place like Vancouver or Edmonton or Toronto, right? Did you think you were safe? It used to be that Canada was safe. My mom dropped me off on Queen Street when I was, I think, 14 to go shopping with my friend and left me there for the day. And I think I took the train home, but I can't exactly remember. Maybe my dad, there's an outside chance my dad picked me up and drove me home. My grandmother lived in Toronto, so we visited often. And that was like, you know, something that was seen as pretty safe. You weren't worried that your kid was going to be, get lost or nothing too serious anyway. I mean, Toronto's Toronto and it's serious and, you know, take it seriously. But it wasn't really terrible in the mid-90s, from what I remember anyway. And so this is a jarring story. On City News, they're talking about a woman in Vancouver who's being followed by this dude. And I'll show the video without sound here. But she's walking for 40 minutes and this guy's following her. Wild, right? So she's got long bits of video. Oh, this is the same bit, but she's got bits of video where she's walking down the street, and he's following her, and he's like, she goes up to this group of skaters and sits with them, and then he goes away. But weird, right? And not escalated to the point of being attacked yet. But I've also reported on groups of kids beating up on other kids in Edmonton, stealing. Theft or whatever, and the groups of kids are of one specific ethnicity. Very interesting stuff. So I don't know what to make of that. But it seems that Canada is changing and changing quickly, right? Or it has changed over the last 10 years, and now that change is becoming apparent. I think that's more accurate. Okay, moving into another interesting story before getting into the CPC. There was reports yesterday, I talked about this, of the BC father who was arrested for misgendering his daughter, and the bail hearing, he was kept in custody. And here's BC father arrested earlier this week on contempt of court charges related to his outspoken opposition to his transgendered child's hormone treatment about to appear before the BC Supreme Court. Lawyer Carrie Lind put out the following bail argument earlier this morning, and there's the bail argument wrapped up if you want to read it. I'm not going to. Update. The BC father in the CD versus Alberta case has been ordered to remain in custody until he has a trial on criminal contempt charges. Defense arguments are dismissed. They're letting people who commit sexual child crimes out because of COVID. And if you misgender your daughter and commit contempt of court, you got to stay in jail, buddy. I'm sorry about your luck, and the risk is worth it. You're a public menace. Isn't that interesting? Isn't that interesting to note? Weird, right? Okay, Aaron O'Toole. Okay, I haven't watched this speech, and I feel I should watch the speech. I haven't had a chance to yet. It was airing yesterday. It was live at 5:15, and I had a thing I had to do last night, so I haven't watched it yet. Not last night, not this morning. So this is not my response to the speech. I'll tell you what the news said. I'll tell you what some people said. I'll tell you what Aaron said. I'll watch the speech, and then I'll give you my response, what I thought of it tomorrow. But I thought that the time was weird. 5:15 on a Friday? Man, I can't wait to hear the primetime speech at 5:15 on a Friday. I'm excited to be speaking at the convention tonight. Hope you can all join me at 5:15 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Okay, 5:15. Why 5:15? It seems, maybe I'm stuck on that and it's bad, but it seems like a poor time to get a lot of people. Like if you're going to do an afternoon thing, do it 3:30 or something like that. But maybe he thinks people are at work and they won't be able to watch, but maybe the office will put on a watch party, like if Trump was making a speech at 1:00, right? In the States, some people would put that on in the office, maybe, wouldn't they? I would. I remember when big events I used to work at a school. I remember when big events would happen and somebody would plug in the TV so there's TVs on carts. Somebody plugged in the TV and plugged in the cable and put the news on and put it there was a back room where the TVs were kept, and the one TV was off to the side with the news on, and everybody would come and stand and watch the news if there was like big news happening not really before the internet, but before anybody had anything in their pockets or anything like that. Like 2004 or 5. I was on my way home from work when the Twin Towers fell down, right? Like I used to print out MapQuest, so I'm old, okay? But that's how it used to work. People used to do that. Maybe that culture has changed, but the culture of watching everything together, that's weird. Putting it right at like dinner prep time or dinner time or when people are on the way home from work, that's weird. If you want it to be after work, then make it after work, not like 5 minutes after work. Get in your car. Ooh, I can't wait to watch Aaron O'Toole's address to the Conservative Party of Canada, or the CPC convention. Ooh, right? Like drive home while you're YouTubing that? I don't know. It's okay. Maybe I'm wrong. Okay. Here's Sharon's sister upstairs, and she says, O'Toole said the party can't afford to appear passive in the face of the climate threat. Quote, we can't ignore the reality of climate change. The debate is over. Oh, I bet that this speech went over like a lead balloon. There are people who liked it. Here's Stephen Taylor. An absolute phenomenal speech by Aaron O'Toole. I am truly honored to be running as the CPC HQ candidate in University Rosedale as part of the team. 203 likes. There's another person who said the same thing, almost exactly the same thing, had 290 likes. I thought, that's interesting. Notable, just because it's like lukewarm, like, oh, okay, I guess so. Didn't watch the speech yet. I think that's the response. I didn't have time yet. Oh, I'll get there, I don't know. Aaron O'Toole says conservatives must change or risk losing again to Trudeau. Okay. I can get behind that message because what they did and what they're doing is exactly what they did. But what they did was, we could do what Trudeau's doing better. And that's basically it. This is what MSNBC, CBC News says. Okay. During a 30-minute address to party delegates assembled for a 3-day policy convention, O'Toole said Prime Minister Justin Trudeau continues to enjoy support despite a series of scandals and a muddled response to the COVID-19 pandemic because too many Canadians don't feel they have a home in the Conservative Party. Quote, we have lost 2 elections in 5.5 years. In that time, we've had 4 leaders. We must present new ideas, not make the same arguments, hoping that maybe this time more Canadians will come around to our position, O'Toole said. We are never going to win over Canadians just by relying on Justin Trudeau to continue to disappoint. His scandals, as outrageous as they often are, will never be enough to defeat him, he said. O'Toole said the party will be relegated to the opposition benches indefinitely if it continues to run up lopsided victories in Western Canada and rural areas while underperforming in the country's big cities. We will give Justin Trudeau the fight of his life. To do so, said O'Toole, Conservatives must shed their image as a party hostile to the environment and the interests of working people while staying true to their foundational principles of smaller government and lower taxes. Quote, we will give Justin Trudeau the fight of his life because there is one thing the Liberals fear more than anything else, a Conservative Party with the courage to grow, to be bold, and to change, and that's the Conservative Party that many Canadians are waiting for, O'Toole said. A Conservative Party that is willing to change. Okay. Not going with you there. O'Toole said the party must do more than shift its policy positions. It must also do whatever it can to welcome Canadians of all racial and ethnic backgrounds and members of the LGBTQ community into the fold. Quote, they want to be able to display our lawn signs with pride in the next election and send the clear message that everyone is welcome in our movement, O'Toole said of conservative-minded voters who are sometimes reluctant to publicly identify with the party. We need to be a party for all Canadians. O'Toole said that if the party members are serious about winning, they must embrace change, even if it goes against party orthodoxy. Over the course of his 16-page speech, O'Toole used the word change 12 times in English. He said Conservatives must make a direct appeal to private sector union workers in particular because New Democrats no longer stand up for working Canadians and their families. He's going after the NDP foundation, like base? Really? Interesting. And I mean, I agree that the NDP is not looking after their traditional base. The NDP was the farmer union, the workers union, right? Originally. But that's a very, very light history of the NDP to say it, to understate it there. But I think that it's interesting that the Conservatives are identifying that as a growth area, right? Like you would think that the middle, but no, the far left. Let's go. We could convince those guys. They're not being courted by full-blown communism right now. Yeah, strong fiscal message. Okay. Canada's at a crossroads, he says. While he's not embracing some of the big ticket items the Liberals have floated so far, such as the National Childcare Plan and Pharmacare, O'Toole said Conservatives must present a viable COVID-19 recovery plan that will boost small business grappling with losses after a year of lockdowns. He also vowed to enact a comprehensive jobs plan to restore the million jobs lost in the country over the last year. I think that if you just said we need to open the economy and let people get back to business, you'd have a lot of people who are interested in hearing that message. That's all you have to say. We have to get out of the way and let businesses reopen without business punishing restrictions like vaccine passports and insane talk like all that. But he won't say any of that. He won't say any of that. Or we have to come up with a comprehensive COVID-19 recovery plan. That's what he says, right? There's a reason that they're not very popular. And it's not because Conservatives need a brighter future with rebranding. Although O'Toole could use a new communications team. Back to this. He said COVID-19 relief programs must be wound down only when it's prudent to do so, and a return to balanced budgets should not be rushed. Do you remember earlier in the speech when he said that we have to ignore party orthodoxy, even if it goes against party orthodoxy, like balanced budgets? Who needs that in a Conservative Party? Bah! We've got to prudently wind down this spending program, says O'Toole. Okay. A return to balanced budgets should not be rushed. Budgets balance themselves. Everyone, don't worry about it. Sure. Quote, Canada is a crossroads. This is funny. He outlines one veers off. They outline one side, but they don't offer O'Toole's alternative. I think it's quite funny. Canada is a crossroads. The two paths before us could not be more different. O'Toole said, one veers off into the unknown with more risky shutdowns and unfunded, unknown, and untested changes that will leave millions more Canadians behind. That's the path of Mr. Trudeau's reimagined economy. He said the party must push for more funding to fight mental illness, a problem made far worse by a pandemic that has many people isolated and alone. O'Toole said a government led by him would introduce a mental health action plan that would transfer more money to the provinces to expand coverage. He also promised to tackle a runaway opioid overdose crisis that in some parts of the country claimed many more lives last year than the pandemic. We'll talk about the overdose issue, and we'll talk about the racial issue as well later in the show. Both have their own segments, believe it or not. And it's interesting how the reality of what is happening is different than the reality that Mr. O'Toole is trying to sell. It's so interesting. Like, in order to win the election as Conservatives, we have to be willing to abandon party orthodoxy and become centrists. That's how we win as Conservatives. Conservative centrists. Okay, back to O'Toole. O'Toole said he doesn't want Conservative candidates to be branded as climate change deniers in the next election campaign. His speech was light on specifics. To those who are expecting a dramatic moment, I'm afraid you'll be disappointed, O'Toole said, but he promised to present a comprehensive plan to drive down greenhouse gas emissions ahead of the next election. Totally believable. I believe 10 days before the election, actual election day, or how about election weekend? Because, whatever. How about election week, right? Why not? Let's roll those ballots in over 3 weeks. Who cares, right? Anyway, 10 days before that magic date, that's when we'll get some kind of comprehensive climate plan that will be overshadowed by some other catastrophe or other scandal that is common in an election cycle. So the washing machine of the election cycle will wash away how terrible the climate plan is, because they don't have one, because their only climate plan is saying climate change is real and we have to have a plan for it. That's it. That's their only plan. They don't have an actual plan, and they won't have an actual plan unless the actual plan has to do with giving money to China for some reason. Okay, back to this. O'Toole has promised to scrap the carbon tax on consumers, but he's vowed to pursue a carbon pricing regime to make big polluters pay for emissions. So when, say, Apple has to pay more for something, they factor that paying more for something into the price that you pay for the iPhone that you buy. Okay? Same with every other company. Doesn't matter who pays for the increase, whether it's big consumers or the customer at the front end, like from the government's intention. The person who ends up paying for it is typically the consumer, because the consumer spends money on the product. And if the product costs more to manufacture, it costs more to the consumer. That's just how it works. So it's the same thing. I'll banish that tax and replace it with a hidden tax. The debate is over about climate change. We cannot ignore the reality of climate change. The debate is over, O'Toole said, adding that the Tories must boldly reclaim the environment as an area where conservatives are leaders. I guess he's going to do a really good job at not doing well in Alberta and not doing well in rural areas. I mean, like, can you wait for a prime minister who just, believes fully in climate change and says the debate is over, and they're going to have all sorts of nudges to deal with climate change? Who knows what their plans are? No, really, who knows what their plans are? They don't even know what their plans are. We just have to believe them, right? We just have to believe that their plans are the best plans, because they'll do them better than Justin Trudeau, just like Andrew Scheer could. And who was the leader before that? Doesn't even matter. Stephen Harper, I know. Aaron O'Toole, no budget for 2 years is simply incompetent. There was a time, I think it was 2011, when Harper's government came down because of a lack of fiscal transparency. Basically, you're not giving us enough information in this budget, and we don't believe you, so we want to take control of the government from you to look at the books. 2 years, whatever, it's fine. It's fine. When we have a valuable climate plan, that's when we'll trigger the election that will hold them accountable. Those liberals. Here's a change passed at the CPC convention that can have a big effect on the next leadership race. Ridings won't necessarily be equally weighted by 100 points anymore. If there are only 30 votes cast, it'll only count for 30 points. This especially affects Quebec ridings. So here's a further example. Under the existing rules, a riding with 30 votes and a riding with 1,500 votes are both weighted equally, 100 points in the leadership race. The new rule means the riding with 30 votes would only get 30 points. This affects other places too, but Quebec has a ton of these ridings. So interesting. So they're kind of neutering the equality of their ridings in order to find equality among individual votes. Seems weird. Seems strange, but whatever. They're making lots of changes. There's a whole bunch of policy things that are up for debate, and they're making lots of changes. So what is going on is what political parties usually engage in and kind of figuring out how they're going to govern over the next few years, right? And this is the input of the members, etc. I think, and I don't know. It's interesting to me. It's kind of wonky. It's kind of a weird thing to be interested in. But I usually have a cursory look at what's going on and what changes are made and like what are the big ones, right? Like give me the highlights. But I think maybe I'm one of like 12 people who are interested in the highlights of policy changes and at the party level. Anyway, regardless, I'm interested in that kind of stuff, and it's happening this weekend. So if you're interested in that kind of stuff, watch out for it on Twitter. There's lots of people breaking down like the highlights. There's lots of people saying, "Oh, this might be interesting for these reasons," just like I showed you there. So, and that person's one of them. So if you're interested in that, watch or follow that person. Moving into international diplomacy in Canada. Washington Post is reporting, according to Breaking 911, the Biden administration is currently considering flying migrants to states near the Canadian border, according to the Department of Homeland Security officials. I mean, welcome to Canada, right? Here's the Fox News. Now that Biden has opened the floodgates to illegals on the southern border, he's looking to fly them north to the Canadian border near Roxham Road. Gary presumes. Anyone in Canada paying attention to this? This Marty says, I imagine a deal was made between these two traitors, Biden and Trudeau, that the U.S. will give Canada a bunch of COVID-19 vaccines if Trudeau allows illegal migrants into Canada that cross the U.S. southern border. Our two countries are headed to hell with these two clowns in charge, according to Marty. And yeah, kind of terrifying, right? Like that's not great. That's not great. That's not ideal. That's not a good situation for anybody. And I hope that is incorrect. I hope that that's not right, but I fear that it's right. I fear that it's right. The two Michaels, just to stay with international diplomacy, here's Senator Leo Housakis. He's responding to this Mackenzie Gray. Our CTV reporter asks Justin Trudeau if he thinks the two Michaels will get a fair trial. Justin Trudeau says the challenges around a lack of transparency on that process. It is becoming extremely difficult to make judgments around whether or not the trial was fair. Yes, the trial lasted 2 hours. It's totally fair. It's totally fair. Who was his lawyer, right? I don't know. And this is Spavor, Michael Spavor, I believe, had a 2-hour trial yesterday. I thought both were scheduled. I haven't seen results for the other one. It's possible that I missed it, though. But very interesting stuff. Global News, Trudeau calls out China for its lack of transparency surrounding the trial of the two Canadians. It's kind of tepid, isn't it? This is kind of like lukewarm response. Like, you're not very transparent, China. You know, like Xi looks over at the Uyghur Muslims and then back to Trudeau and says, like, yeah, you're right. Moving on. Next question. What a thing to slam. Like, it's not exactly like pointed, right? It's not exactly like, we are upset about this. It's like, well, you know, we'd like to understand. It's a dangerous situation. It's not good, right? I'm laughing because it's terrifying, right? Okay, just so we're clear. Kenny says, Zero Fox says, Kenny, this is Jason Kenney, Alberta Premier, should state, as long as I'm Premier, there will never be a sales tax in Alberta. That he won't is unsettling. Listen, I think that there are places around the world that they look at how much extra cost can people bear. And that's like floating a balloon to test the weather, right? To see how things go. And if the weather balloon doesn't get struck with lightning, looks like it's okay. And then they can do it in other places. And I don't know what the testing of the weather balloon and being struck by lightning would do, but they're testing things out, testing the response to people. And Ontario and most provinces in Canada have a federal GST and a PST, provincial sales tax. And in Ontario, it was 15% for a really long time. So 15% of all goods and services are subject to a 15% tax. 7% goes to the province, and now that's 6%, I think, or 6% is GST, and it's 13% HST, harmonized sales tax now. But all of that aside, most places in Canada are paying between 10, I think it's at least 10. Alberta, I think, is 7 because of the GST, or 6 maybe GST, and but most places are paying above 10 in Canada. And so the theory is they can pay that too, right? And why not? And where's all that? Where is the revenue going to come from to replace the lack of oil money and the lack of revenue coming in from Alberta, from the oil money, from the taxes, and all of the other assorted money that comes in from that, replaced with a tax? Yay, right? And it's less popular than a carbon tax, but I mean, the carbon tax is going up on April 1st as well, right? So I think that this is coming. I think that this is not unavoidable because it's going to be really unpopular, but they're going to say, oh, we have to. And they'll get to the point where it's, you know, the fractured conversations on Twitter where it seems like the obvious answer is clearly like right there. You can just pick it up and you'll have somebody like we should end lockdowns, or we should open the schools because the suicide rate is high. We'll get there. And there are people arguing, people who sound like they have good credentials, who sound like they should be intelligent and arguing the correct side of something, but they're arguing the complete wrong side of it. And you're like, what is going on here? Why is the world crazy? That's the situation we're in. That's the situation you'll get in with the sales tax. It'll be people saying, oh, you're selfish. I can't believe you don't want to help the turtles or whatever, help the thing that we have to help because we have to do this, because if we don't do this, something catastrophic is going to happen. And you're going to be responsible for killing grandma. It's the same script. They do it over and over again, and they'll do it for the sales tax. I was going to say the Ontario sales tax, the Alberta sales tax. They'll do it. I promise you. I promise. I hope I'm wrong. But I fear that I'm right. Okay, this just made me really laugh because I think that it's very, very, very funny. And so we'll watch the first 30 seconds of this where they talk about how segregation is good. This woman talks about, I'll just let it go. I'll just let it play. This is funny and unbelievable. Okay, here we go.
So let's talk about this. Columbia University was trending on Twitter recently because they're offering students a chance to attend an additional commencement ceremony based on some specific factors. For example, their race, their income level, or other identifying factors. For instance, there could be one held for an LGBTQ plus community, or for students from lower income backgrounds. So what do we think of this idea?
I love this idea. I am really...
I love it. I love it. Can we have more segregation? What? Okay, Eric says, hold on, if segregation is now good, what did Rosa Parks and Dr. Martin Luther King fight for? Did these folks not study history? I thought the whole point was to be inclusive and together. No, no, no. The whole point was to vilify anybody who's outside of their current regime of needing help, needing validation, needing, I don't know what. It's very interesting. Here's what Ajax Ontario is doing. This is DurhamRadioNews.com. Ajax announces new $10,000 bursary program for underrepresented high school students. The town of Ajax is launching a new annual bursary program aimed at helping underrepresented local students access post-secondary education. 2 students from each of the town's 5 high schools will receive a $1,000 bursary to pursue college, university, trade school, or an apprenticeship. To be eligible, a student must be between the ages of 17 and 21. They must also be enrolled full-time at either Ajax High School or list the Ajax High Schools. They need to be enrolled or accepted into a secondary program with a full-time course load. The bursaries will be awarded to students who are Black, Indigenous, POC, a person with a disability, or part of the S2LGBTQ plus community. So a straight white student, not eligible. A disabled white student, okay. A gay or S2LGBTQ plus community member who's white, okay. I think that that's very strange, right? And POC, is that a defined term? I find it really interesting how we've all come to accept something that is not clearly defined. And they've got a link here, so maybe there is a definition. But is this a legally defined term? Can you say, this is a cafe for POCs? I own this cafe, and this cafe only serves POCs. Is that okay? Is that something to celebrate? Didn't we have a very big civil rights war about that in like the 60s in the United States, but culturally kind of in the West, right? Didn't we have this conversation? Didn't we decide that judging people by their skin color and race was wrong? No? Did I misinterpret that? Was that a fever dream? I had a dream? Okay. Iowa State House passes bill banning critical race theory from public institutions. Americans are fighting back against the principles of race essentialism, collective guilt, and neo-segregation. Our movement is making incredible progress. Onward. This is anti-critical race theory. I think that critical race theory is a damaging thing to base policy on. I think that it's appalling that anybody in education is willing to entertain this travesty, and I think it's absolutely unbelievable that we've got media that is celebrating this garbage, and with no pushback, right? Like these people are absolutely advocating full-throatedly for complete segregation, and it's not appropriate. It's not appropriate. There are people who will fall for this because they think, yeah, that's right. They've been downtrodden. I had a superintendent of equity at the Upper Grand District School Board tell me that nowhere in the world did people of color have the ability to govern their own, to choose their own course. And I said, like, Japan, India, China? I'm like, how many white people are running China? Are you kidding? Regardless, that's true. Go look at my Upper Grand 7 video series for the Upper Grand District School Board and critical race theory. It's on CanadaReport.co. Honestly, she said that to me. I couldn't believe it. When I picked my jaw off the ground, I was like, what? You're in a high-paid position in a school board? Okay. What happens if a non-Indigenous person shows up to get a vaccine from this race-based operation? Global National is reporting Indigenous pop-up COVID-19 vaccination clinic opens in Kitchener. So if you are Indigenous and in Kitchener, then you can get a vaccine. Welcome to health, race-based health. Right? Critical race theory. This is to be celebrated, right? Oh, sorry, sir. You don't appear to be Indigenous. Please leave. This is an Indigenous only vaccination clinic. You need to leave. You need to get out. But I'm black. Oh, well, are you an indigenous black person? Yes. Right? Like, this is insane. This is insane. This is insane. Not appropriate at all. Everyone's chatting about blood clots generically with AstraZeneca, but the main concern is the type of clots occurring in those under 50, and it's sinus vein thrombosis. And I don't know exactly what that means, but the reason I tagged this, the sinus vein thrombosis, I don't know what that leads to. So do your own reading about that if you're interested in that. But the contents of the AstraZeneca vaccine were listed in a newspaper article that I used the other day. And this isn't my meme, but it's somebody's meme. And interesting that the polysorbate 80 is used in the AstraZeneca vaccine. And if you Google polysorbate 80 dangers, the blood clot thing pops up. Again, interesting. Can they say that they didn't know? Right? Here's another interesting thing from AstraZeneca. This is from 2016, a few years ago, right? AstraZeneca today coughed up $5.5 million, $4.2 million pounds, or dollar pounds, $5.5 million, $4.2 million pounds to settle a highly embarrassing foreign bribery probe amid claims that the British pharma giant faked conferences and offered gifts to local doctors in Russia and China who bought its drugs. Britain's number 2 drug maker, one of the biggest international pharma firms in China with 45,000 staff, falsely recorded improper payments in China and Russia as bona fide business expenses in the U.S. Securities and Exchanges Commission said. Some bribery allegations go back as far as 2005, with AstraZeneca said to have made improper payments of gifts, conference support, travel, cash, and other benefits, mainly to Chinese and Russian state medical workers to reward or influence their purchase of its drugs. That's concerning to know, right? Within context, isn't it? What exactly is happening? Here's Toronto Mayor. This is interesting. I keep asking if there is demand. Where's the demand? Is the demand such that we need this many doses? Are there going to be millions of people lining up after the mandatory doses and after the vaccine, after everyone who wants a shot has gotten the shot? How long will demand keep up for this? Will all 38 million people in Canada get vaccinated? I mean, I'm sure there are going to be people who don't want to be vaccinated, who are concerned about the very concerning things happening around the world with this so-called vaccination. But in Toronto, this weekend already, apparently, and today is Saturday. This was 10 hours ago. So that's wild. Toronto Mayor John Tory says there are still appointments available for the COVID-19 vaccine on the weekend. Where's the demand? Isn't that weird? Isn't that strange? Isn't that like what we've been told is that, oh my gosh, all we need is to get the vaccines, and once we get the vaccines, what if nobody takes the vaccine? What if nobody downloads the app? Nobody downloaded the app. Useless. Waste of money. Expensive waste of money. Expensive, dangerous waste of money. Who got the money? Right? I don't know. I wish that I did know. I came across this yesterday, and this dad is saying, where are the dads? Where are the dads standing up? He says he sees the mums, he sees the fight in some people, but where are the dads? I'll give him 30 seconds here. He's very passionate. Some days I feel like this. Other days I feel like there's no point in lamenting, because they're lamenting, they'll use it against you. You know, they'll take what you say and they'll twist it and they'll come to a conclusion, and they'll try and sell that conclusion to somebody else to make you look bad. So I appreciate what this guy's doing. It's like an 8-minute video. It's worth a watch. Here we go.
Or to fight for, or to fight against. Everyone's just going with the flow. So now I can't say that I'm fighting for you anymore. I'm fighting for the ones that are defenseless, the ones that don't even know or have the awareness to know that what they're being told to do, what they're being forced to do, what is being imposed upon them is detrimental to their mental health and to their futures. So I'm here, I'm pleading with you because I don't see any men. So I made this video because I've seen a few, but I want to see many. I want to see the fathers. I want to see the men. I want to see you rise up in righteous anger.
You know what they do? And I'll tell you why. I'll tell you why this is happening, that the men are being quiet. This is why. This is why. because they'll take your kids. Because if you stand up and say, you can't put that on my kid's face. I don't believe in your COVID. I don't believe in your this. I don't believe in your that. They'll take your kids. That's why the number one thing for me when I tell people that you have to fight smart. And you have to play the game. The number one reason why I want the masks and the face coverings off my children is because of their health, because their health is my number one priority. And I'm listening to my doctor's advice to make sure that my children's health is top priority. So you have to frame it right. You have to be smart about it. And unfortunately, it's hard to do that right. They will twist your words. They will take what you say out of context and they will try and bury you with it. They will sell it to whoever is buying. And there are a lot of people buying these days. And so be careful. Be careful. I appreciate the passion. I appreciate what this guy's trying to do. I do. I really do. But you got to be smart because they will do everything they can to bury you. And it's not fair. Moving into opening up, Wellington, Dufferin, Guelph Public Health originally had the region staying in red, and they changed their mind. So we're actually in orange now. But anyway, breaking, this is the Wellington Advertiser. Officials say region moving to the province's orange COVID-19 alert level Monday. Oh, that's Monday, not today, sorry. Spokesperson aired an initial announcement saying the region was to remain in red. So initially they were saying that we were going to be in red because of the variants of concern for another 2 weeks, but no longer. We will be in orange. Here is another thing. Ontario eases some pandemic restrictions for bars and restaurants to boost economy. I said it's not an economy boost. It's an insult. It's not an economy boost to have, oh, here you go. Here's some patio dining, boost the economy. Patio dining, we've changed the rules again in gray zone. Now you can open up. So if you change the rules in gray zone now, why didn't you change the rules in gray zone 6 months ago, right? And then maybe give these people some kind of lifeline. What insulting, ridiculous leadership. It's terrible. It's terrible. Toronto solves its destruction of small businesses by allowing outdoor haircuts. Couldn't make this up if I tried. Science. And I'm not even sure that they did allow the outdoor haircuts. I think that they allowed bars and restaurants to do outdoor dining, but I don't know that they allowed haircuts. I haven't seen that. So that's tentative. Bonnie Crombie says, my statement below on the province of Ontario adjusting its COVID-19 framework to allow outdoor dining in the gray zone. There's a lot of people who are upset. If you read through the comments, there's a lot of people who are upset. Bonnie Crombie is saying she's thankful for all of this, and blah blah blah. Protecting our community is most important. Blah blah blah. But it's very interesting that nobody's talking about getting back to normal. There was Cam Guthrie as well was talking about how. Hold on, I'll get the tweet. Okay, it was a retweet by Cam Guthrie, but he's retweeting a different mayor, this one, Mayor of Cambridge. She says, Ontario big city mayors met to talk what COVID recovery looks like. We're calling on governments to put a plan in place that supports small business. We're looking for greater attention to affordable, supportive housing. This is like using women to also have racial equality, racial justice, environmental justice, and all this other stuff. We have to use COVID-19 to get small businesses back online. We could just get small businesses back online by opening the economy. But no. We have to use COVID recovery funds to get small businesses back online and supportive housing, affordable supportive housing. Bonnie Crombie says the same thing, right? She's tweeting out the same thing. Great meeting today with Ontario Big City Mayors where we discussed our continued response to COVID-19 and the key tools we need to work towards recovery. A key element of that will be more affordable housing in all municipalities across Ontario. I don't think people don't understand that she's talking about supportive, affordable housing, right? She doesn't make that claim. She says affordable housing, right? That plays well to young people trying to get into their first home, right? People trying to buy their homes for expanding their families and stuff. And if you don't have $1 million, and when you were 20 you didn't have $1 million, you're not buying a house, right? Like, sorry man, your house is going to cost $1 million. I think it's weird. It's weird, right? The tip of the spear, right? The armor piercing bullet. Get the women, right? And then also racial equality and environmental justice, right? Get the COVID relief funds, and then also affordable housing and supportive housing. Can we just buy some hotels, right? Like, I don't know, man. I don't trust any of them. Shizers, snakes, shysters, snakes. That's what I meant. It should be based on square footage, says the Ottawa mayor. Here's. He's been the mayor of Ottawa for a long time. Here he is talking about how he's talking to CTV Morning Live and talking about red zone and changes to that. Here we go.
Don't count on a per head basis. It should be based on square footage. So, you know, a big restaurant like Red Lobster that might be able to accommodate 150 people is going to have 10 people, but then a little cafe that normally accommodates 20 people is allowed to have 10 people. So it doesn't make sense. I think you got to come up with a percent of the square footage. That seems to be a more reasonable suggestion.
I think that was adopted, but I don't have the link for that. But I think it was adopted. But I think it's funny that he says, you know, it doesn't make much sense. Yeah, no, it doesn't make any sense. None of the rules make any sense. They don't stop spread. The masks don't work. That's demonstrable, right? Like we started masks last May or June. No, July. It was July. So in the summer, after the seasonality of the whole thing had reduced, and they used the reduction of the seasonality to say, oh, masks work. They didn't work. It didn't stop anything. Ridiculous. Doesn't make any sense. No, you're right, sir. You're right. You should act on that. Follow your instincts, Luke. What was his first name? It's not Luke. Jim. Follow your instincts, Jim. Mark Quinn says, Dr. Fitzgerald discussing sports and the virus. Sports result in multiple contacts, she says, but recognizing the value of sports and public health is asking sports officials to submit back to play plans. So Mark Quinn is a reporter with CBC in St. John's. In St. John's, they want public health to vet back to play plans. Everything you want to do now has to go through public health vetting. Is that okay with you? Are you cool with that? No? Speak up. I think it's totally inappropriate, right? Like, no, that's not how this works. That's not how this works. Global news. Investigators charged a 22-year-old as they allege he was one of the main organizers of a rally that broke provincial restrictions amid the COVID-19 pandemic. So this is to cool your jets about protesting. It's getting warm out, and they don't want people organizing en masse, right? So they're handing out fines. The thing is, though, protesting is allowed under the charter rights. This will be thrown out. This will be thrown out. They have absolutely no basis for this. Organizing a protest during the pandemic violates pandemic restrictions. Yeah, have a read of the Charter of Rights and Freedoms and then get back to me. Here is a long thread, and I think this is, Winston, if you watch my show, I think this would be worthwhile compiling and then delegating at your public health, because this kind of stuff put on record is helpful, I think, just having it read into record. But Winston goes through Ottawa Public Health and Vera Etches have plunged the city of 1 million back into red. As usual, they have blamed us, the citizens, for this. But what is the real reason hospitals are busy? We have 19 non-ICU COVID-19 patients currently in hospital. It's a direct result of the culture of fear this city is created both by Ottawa Public Health and Miss Etches, Dr. Etches. We are making up for missed surgeries and people who've delayed coming in for months with other ailments out of fear only to see their condition get worse. Let's look at a few examples of how this fear is reinforced. This is what I think is valuable, saying like connecting these dots for the people on the board and saying, we see you. I think it's valuable. I really do. Anyway, he says, let's look at a few examples. October 2nd, 2020, our healthcare system is in crisis. In reality, here's the opinion, an opinion piece that says the city's main hospital is neither overwhelmed by COVID-19 cases nor even close to it, according to the president and CEO, Cameron Love. Over the last few weeks, there have been no more than 2 COVID-19 patients in intensive care at TOH at any one time, but the hospital could handle 30 to 40 such cases with no issue whatsoever, Love said in an interview. So that's one example. He has many more. It's worth going through this thread if you're interested. That's GovGone, Twitter, in the list if you're interested in the description. Germany saw a 0.6 excess mortality adjusted for population and age. Germany had one of the hardest lockdowns in the winter, and Sweden had none. Look at this graph. Sweden and Germany had exactly the same COVID deaths, and Germany had no excess mortality. Does it ring yet? Are you seeing what's happening? Are you? I hope so. Mask work is akin to a religious incantation such as God exists. You either believe it or you don't, but however hard you lock down or you look, there's no empirical evidence to support the proposition. This is a Twitter fight. Oh, he removed the tweet? No, he didn't. This is a Twitter fight between two people which I found interesting. And the conclusion was basically like, masks don't work. And this person was trying to argue that masks do work, and there was lots of evidence that I thought was compelling. And basically I tagged this to use later in one of my letters to my public health board. Millhouse Van Houten says, good news. Ontario's public health officials have done quite well financially in 2020. We're all in this together. Toronto's medical officer of health, Ms. Davila, received a raise of 26,000 or 8.6% over 2019. Ottawa's medical officer of health received a raise of 110,000 or 42.8 over 2019. Peel's medical officer of health, Low, received a raise of 100,000, 99,000, 38.5% over 2019. Ontario's chief medical officer received a raise of 30,000, 7.4% over 2019. That's pretty poor compared to the other guys, eh? We're all in this together, though. And none of those people lost salaries for a single day, right? A single day. And I'm not saying that that's a measure of whether or not you were impacted by this. I'm saying that when making decisions about other people having to, by government edict, not because of the pandemic, but by government order, have to close their business, these people aren't impacted in the same way. And I think that that's weird. In a situation where you're being trained to restrain people, or you're being trained to like taser people, you also have to be tasered. You also have to be restrained to understand what it feels like, to understand how not to push the arm too far, right? Or how to not hold the taser gun too long because it's effective in a short burst. It's interesting that in this situation, there's no financial penalties for imposing the financial destruction of entire industries, right? Entire sectors of the economy gone, decimated by public order, by order of public health. In Peel, if you are exposed to somebody else who is sick, then your whole class is subject to being removed, and you have to be under a 14-day quarantine. And at some point in Peel as well, they were saying that the person had to quarantine by themselves away from their families. And here's News 1130, and they say, imagine having to take a COVID-19 test to end your 14-day quarantine. If you don't take the test as well, you have to spend another 10 days for some reason. I'm not sure why. I don't know the medical reason why. I can't imagine there being one, but maybe, who knows? But imagine having to take your test to end your 14-day quarantine and seeing more than 1,000 people in the line ahead of you. Here's the screenshot. There are currently 1,242 people ahead of you. And then the call has been disconnected. Please try again later. Ooh, yowza, right? Yep. 3 more schools closed in Dufferin Peel Catholic Board told total of 10. Total of 10. A Catholic school board west of Toronto closed 3 more schools to in-person learning due to COVID-19 outbreaks Friday for a total of 10 across the board. The Dufferin Peel Catholic School Board shuttered 3 elementary schools as of Friday. The 3 schools are listed. St. Sophia School in Mississauga is among the schools that have been closed for longer. It's reported 10 students and 5 staff members who are ill with COVID-19. Spokesman Bruce Campbell says the board has been forced to shutter the schools to in-person learning because of teachers who have been directed to self-isolate. He says there aren't enough permanent staff and occasional teachers to provide safe supervision and to maintain operations in an in-person environment at the facilities. They're going to use this to try and shut down schools completely. It's coming. Efren Dollar says, more testing in schools, please. Anthony Fury responds with, here's what happened when Toronto's schools had new variant cases. But here's Stephen Lisi, and this is from yesterday. Yep. Yesterday at 4:13 p.m., positivity rates among students, staff, and families over the past 7 days as part of our asymptomatic testing program was under 1%. 0.67%. Another layer of prevention to keep schools safe, working with Chief Medical Officer of Health to protect student safety and in-class learning. So they're doing preventative testing, and it is within the margin of error. It is absolutely useless, and showing that asymptomatic people are not sick. They're not sick and not capable of spreading disease. Lockdowns, school closures, and panic porn kills kids. Open all schools now, not in April, not in September, now. Not elementary schools, all schools now. I mean, high school kids are being impacted by this massively because their social lives are important to them. And having their social lives cut off for an entire year is damaging. Anyway, number of youth in hospital after suicide attempts tripled over 4-month period under COVID. Referrals to eating disorders programs increased by 90% in 4-month period, McMaster Children's Hospital says. I shared some data yesterday from a news article that said suicide rate was 10% lower than it had been in 2019. That was in Alberta. Apparently in Ontario, things look very different. McMaster Children's Hospital says it has seen a steady increase of youth in crisis since the COVID-19 pandemic began. According to the hospital, youth admitted for medical support after a suicide attempt has tripled over a 4-month period compared to last year. The hospital also said that patients are staying in hospital longer due to more serious attempts. McMaster Children's Hospital says a large number of these youth have reported COVID-related issues, such as lack of social interaction, increased conflict at home, and the inability to rely on friends as main contributors. We are coping with multiple stressors brought on by the current pandemic, says Dr. Paolo Piers, a psychologist and clinical director of child and youth and mental health outpatient services. We must be attentive to the unique impact of these stressors on children and youth depending on their stage of development. The hospital said that over the same time period, youth admitted with substance abuse disorders has doubled compared to last year, the hospital says. In particular, the use of potentially deadly opiates has increased. Well, that's terrible. Remember how I keep talking about how Guelph doubled the number of opium deaths with their safe injection sites? So in 2019, we had 7, and I kept saying in 2020 we had 15, and I just wasn't aware of the real number. Apparently, we had 24. 24 opium deaths recorded in Guelph in 2020 is a 242% increase over the 7 recorded in 2019. So at least people are paying attention to this, but they're doing the wrong thing. You know what happens when you see an intervention that doesn't work? You stop the intervention. You stop wasting the money. Instead of stopping the intervention, Guelph is doubling down. Second supervised injection site to open at Loyola House in April. So in 2022, when we're opening our 4th injection site, and over 2019, we've seen 1,000% rise in deaths, maybe we'll stop it. Maybe. But who knows? Who knows? An application to bring a second overdose prevention site to Guelph has been approved for Loyola House. Loyola? Sorry, I forgot that wrong. A congregate setting currently being used to house people experiencing homelessness during the pandemic. So no need to take them now to the safe injection site. We brought the safe injection site to them. No more cab rides. Guelph used to pay for cab rides from the place to the safe injection site and back. Streamlining. Guelph Community Health Center, which operates a consumption and treatment site out of its downtown Guelph location, recently received an exemption from Health Canada to operate a similar urgent public health needs site at Loyola House. The overdose prevention site that will be at Loyola House is only for the people who are residing there, so people from the surrounding neighborhoods wouldn't be coming to the site, said Melissa Kwidowski, sorry, I forgot that wrong, Primary Health Director at the Guelph Community Health Center. There are a lot of components to it, given that the exemption comes from the federal government, but funding comes from the provincial government. So there are a few steps to go through, she said. Last year, a record number of people in Guelph died as a result of opium overdose, but the doctor noted that none of those deaths occurred at the consumption and treatment center, where people who are using the drugs do so under supervision. The 24 opiate deaths recorded in Guelph in 2020 is a 242% increase over the 7 recorded in 2019. They may not have died at the overdose site, but if this intervention resulted in an increase like that, time to look at the intervention, right? Time to say maybe what we did didn't work. Maybe what we did actually contributed to this increase. Maybe what we did is wrong. That's the obvious conclusion that I would go to. And under the edict of do no harm, if you can see the 242% increase, maybe doubling down on the action that resulted in the 242% increase is probably a bad conclusion, probably a bad move, probably a bad thing to do. But maybe that's just me. All right, that's enough out of me this morning. Thanks for watching, everybody. Check out CanadaPoly.com, check out CanadaReport.co, check out SpeakingMoistly.co, and have a wonderful, wonderful day.